but also the country as a whole. So is it going to happen sooner rather than later? Peter is in Oxford. Peter, what do you think?
Hello, James.
Hello.
Well, first of all, thanks for putting on Liz. She's brilliant, as always.
She is, isn't she?
I agree entirely with everything she says. You and I have had this discussion, I think, on several occasions.
Well, we haven't, because I've always said later, not sooner, and today I'm thinking, could it actually happen a little bit sooner than...
That's what I'm just saying. Yes. I'm very pleased that you're shifting, and based on evidence, I think that's the right thing to do.
I may be shifting. I haven't shifted yet. I'm considering a shift.
Well, let me tell you why. I mean, first of all, the mounting evidence, and if you look at the European movement's regular Brexit carnage briefing, there's every day there are more and more stories, the kind you've often put on your show. And then there's the Davis downside dossier, if you're wondering where to look, 1,000 or more reasons why Brexit has been harmful, and about 20 or so why it's been good. So I'd recommend people to look at that. That's the evidence. And it is more and more. And I think people are responding to that very understandably. I think often people respond to trivial things, like when I was arriving at a foreign airport, an EU airport recently, and my Irish passport got me through the short queue, and I was looking at the UK queue, and I'm sure you've been there too. And I think people see that happening, and they see, gosh, Brexit's affecting me personally in my life, and of course, obviously the commercial things, but it's not just the commercial things; it's the whole. It's being looked at in a different way.
You feel stupid when you're standing in a queue that you don't have to stand in. And here's another Idiot's Corner entrance. Here's Dylan. He says, you're basically calling 52% of the country idiots. You're so obnoxious, it's unbelievable. The only reason we will probably go back in is because of the constant whinging of the 48%. 52% of us can't be bothered to listen to your incessant moaning, says Dylan, who is listening to my incessant moaning today and doesn't realise that the reason why they don't want to talk about it anymore is because 52% of the population are not idiots, although Dylan clearly is. The ones who don't want to talk about it anymore are the ones that can't face the evidence and the reality, whereas a growing number of people who do want to talk about it and do recognise the mistake that they made is the only available explanation for the continuing polling that we continue to see.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, the other point I was going to make is it's not 52% anymore, as you said yourself.
No, of course it's not.
And it's not just that people have changed their minds. Many have, and rightly so, because they've looked at the evidence. But it's estimated that between 2 and 3 years after the referendum, had the referendum been rerun, it would have gone the other way, because simply of demographic reasons. As you said, people have joined the electorate and others have left. And so it doesn't take a change.
So is that's the phrase I was looking for was tipping point, wasn't it? That's the phrase I couldn't think of. Tipping point. But here. So Jeff's crunched the numbers. Jeff's tweeted me to say the swing from Leave to Remain changes by 1.3% every year. This is I'm partly through people coming to their senses and partly through demographic change. So by 2030, which is the end of the next political cycle, potentially, it should be around 66.3% for reunion, and that's when parties will start putting it in their manifesto. Would you go sooner or later than the next? So we get this general election out of the way. I would have said at least 2 more, probably 3, last year. The suggestion now is that it could be the one after this. Would you agree with that?
Look at it as a step-by-step process. I mean, I think rejoining is, we're looking at 2 elections away. But I think an awful lot will happen in the meantime. And I think Labour are not being ambitious enough. The trouble is the TCA was badly negotiated, it was done in a hurry. It favoured the EU in many ways. And of course, the EU aren't going to concede massively on things like veterinary standards and so on. There are tweaks to be made, but it won't be massive unless the UK actually looks more adventurously at things like rejoining the single market and customs union. And that's a step on the route. And I think that people will increasingly recognise that is the next step. And
who's going to resist it? Who, apart from people like Dylan, who obviously is struggling to do his shoelaces up at the moment, who's going to lead the resistance? This is what the tipping point is all about, isn't it? When the points that Liz makes and that you make become so obvious, whether it is the personal indignity of having to queue up to get into a country you didn't used to have to queue up to get into. Well, members of your own family, in my case, with an Irish passport, are smoothing their way through customs, or whether it is joining the dots on things like food prices or selling out our farmers. Who would lead the resistance? I mean, who would actually say we're better off being poor?
It's happening faster than we expected.
It is, isn't it?
Because, I mean, look at the years between 2010 and 16. There was a massive shift. I mean, nobody in 2010 would have thought a referendum could go the way it did. And there was a shift in public opinion for whatever reason, and part of it was to do with I suppose the view of the European Union bureaucracy, and also to do with boat people in the Mediterranean and various other factors that happened to occur at the time that shifted public opinion far more than they would now. But the other thing to say is that the whole thing is predicated on a fantasy. When you talk about people who say that it's badly handled. We could have had a good Brexit if only...
I don't hear that so much anymore. There could have been elements of it that aren't as bad as what has happened, but you're right. I mean, the fundamental idea always comes back to the notion that you can leave an organisation with quite strict rules and benefits, and you can no longer have to abide by the rules, but you can still accrue and enjoy all the benefits. I used to say that on an almost daily basis, Peter, as you will remember. And yet still some people have failed to understand the impossibility of doing that. The gym analogy was perfect. We used to have so much fun with our analogies. Do you remember? Those were the days. Almost need a little bit of wistful music playing in the background now. What was your all-time favourite Brexit analogy? I liked, I don't know that I did actually come up with this, but I used it so often I persuaded myself that I had done. Getting the United Kingdom out of the European Union would be like trying to get the eggs out of a baked cake. I thought that was a great analogy. It's like being a member of a gym and no longer paying your membership dues, but turning up the next morning fully expecting to be able to use all of the facilities and the showers. And then the other one was when the negotiations were going on. And everybody said, it's like buying a car. You've got to be prepared to walk away. I said, yeah, it's like driving to the out-of-town car dealership in your old car, parking on the forecourt, going up to Swiss Tony and saying, hi, I'm here to buy a car. And then before he starts negotiating with you about what you're going to get on the new car, what the trim is going to be like, what accessories you have, what extras, what car, how many wheels whether or not it has an engine, before you start negotiating any of that, you go back to your old car and set fire to it. You drop a little match in the petrol tank. So you've blown it. So everyone's going, it's just like negotiating. I've been a negotiator. You've got to be prepared to walk away. So we've already set fire to our old vehicle. We've literally burnt it to the ground. And now you've opened negotiations with the people in charge of deciding what vehicle you get. Now, I mean, madness. I get a lot of messages like this, but I never accept the apology, Phil, in Shropshire. I'm 59, he writes, and I voted Brexit. I regret it every single day. I want to apologise to my fellow Brits for being a plank. I cannot wait to see us rejoin, and I hope it's sooner rather than later. You have nothing to apologise for. Another text pointing out it's not just fruit pickers. Byline TV, the Byline Times is an excellent media organisation, really filling some important spaces now on the newsstands and on broadcast content. They did an interview with fishermen in Cornwall who are expressing how cheated they feel as well. And you must resist the urge. You can call stupid people stupid. I think that's a freedom of speech issue. Very important. We've seen 3 today. We've had Mike, Chris, Dylan. No doubt there'll be more. They are stupid people. They may have the capability to cease being quite as stupid as they currently are, but if you're still clinging to the idea that this is all brilliant and it's all the fault of the people that told you it was going to be rubbish, that it's turned out to be rubbish, then I'm afraid you deserve to be described as stupid. But for everybody else, including farmers who voted for it, including fishermen who voted for it, contempt for the conmen, compassion for the conned. I always remember that poor woman in Lowestoft who rang in. God, we're having a bit of a trip down memory lane today. Was it June? And she was part of one of Farage's parties. And she rang in and was talking about how we can do deals with this and deals with that. She hasn't stopped complaining since about how the fishing industry has been sold down pardon the pun, sold down the river by Brexit. But it was always going to be. That was the point. 10:46 is the time.
Tonight with Andrew Marr.